Hello again. I'm pleased to be able to welcome back another of our valued regulars, Kevin Freeman. Kevin is the host of Economic War Room on Blaze TV and the author of Secret Weapon: How Economic Terrorism Brought Down the Stock Market and Why It Could Happen Again. You can follow Kevin on Twitter at Secret Weapon USA. Kevin, it's always good to have you, especially here. Welcome to Securing America.
Thank you, Frank. Great to be with you.
You have specialized, Kevin, for years in the kind of economic warfare and indeed more generally the unrestricted warfare that the Chinese Communist Party is waging against us. We've had a very good series of conversations in the course of the program, including with Roger Robinson, about the financial dimension of that warfare. And I wanted to ask you about something that, unfortunately, we ran out of time to discuss with Roger, and see what your thoughts are in terms of something that the U.S. government could do that would make it much more difficult for the Chinese to be using Hong Kong as an instrument of financial warfare against us, namely what's called depegging the Hong Kong dollar from the U.S. dollar. Would you explain that to a layman like myself and why that might make a difference if we were to do it?
Sure, Frank. Well, for decades, we've had a special relationship with Hong Kong before the Chinese took over under the British authority and control. And then certainly when the handover took place, we've deemed Hong Kong a special relationship with the United States. And as a result, they wanted stability in their currency. And so we allowed them to peg the Hong Kong dollar with the U.S. dollar because we're the reserve currency of the world. And so a Hong Kong dollar was equally good to a U.S. dollar in almost every respect. But things have changed. Things changed with the Chinese. Literally, it was supposed to be one nation, two systems. Now it's one nation, one corrupt system, and the dollar is being used against us. We could depeg that. We could say no longer, we don't want you pegged to the U.S. dollar, and that would be a severe blow to the Chinese plans to take over the world.
And it's really been teed up by an executive order that the president signed out shortly after the Chinese essentially cracked down, crushing freedom in Hong Kong, saying we're going to treat it like just another Chinese enslaved city. And that would seem to require us really to stop pretending that it's got a separate currency that somehow should have convertibility to U.S. dollars. Kevin, this brings me to a topic that I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about and fortunately now taking further steps to facilitate, and that is trying to help Americans whose money is being invested in China to have an alternative. It's like water. It's going to find a path. In the absence of an alternative, these big investment banks are going to continue, apparently, to chase marginal additional return on investment over other opportunities, even if it means enriching and underwriting and empowering and enabling our enemies. Tell us about the alternative of patriotic investing and how people might be able to do that instead.
Well, you're right, Frank, when you say that these banks are chasing marginal additional returns for their customers, but they're chasing magnificent fees for themselves. They're highly paid to do business in China.
Yes.
22 years ago, I visited Hong Kong, almost 22 years ago, and it was right after the handover, and I got to see the country. It was so exciting. I went into China, and that seemed exciting too. And we thought, well, these are new frontiers for American investors. What we found over the last 2 decades is they're traps for American investors to take our capital, in some cases in outright frauds, and in other cases for Chinese Communist Party purposes. So we've been telling investors, hey, do you want to invest in our adversary or enemy, as I believe, or do you want to invest to benefit America, to be patriotic investors? So we've been talking about that in the Economic War Room since inception. It's part of my book, Game Plan and Secret Weapon, and it is a new institute that we formed called the National Security Investment Consultant Institute, where we have trained financial advisors ready to serve clients, not to invest in the enemy, not to seek that additional marginal return that might be a fraud in China or elsewhere, but to look for ways to invest to enhance America's national security. I think this is the most important initiative of my life, and we're trying to train as many advisors as we can, and they can learn more at economicwarroom.com/advisor. Sign up there, and we'll train advisors to be patriotic in helping their clients as opposed to hurting America.
Yeah, and let me just put a fine point on this, Kevin. As I understand it, you may have some advisors that you've already trained who people can take advantage of, but if they have advisors with whom they've got a good relationship and they value their advice, but they would like to make sure that that advice is informed by the sorts of insights that you're able to convey, insights about specifically the character of the investments that they might otherwise be making in China and what that entails in terms of financial risk, for one thing, as you say, but as Roger was describing, offending their human rights values and priorities, and of course endangering our national security as well. But they can also get these advisors they have a relationship with themselves trained about the alternatives, the patriotic investing options. Just very quickly, give us once more a specific path to getting that kind of help from their own investment advisors.
Well, either they can use an advisor who's already been trained, or even better, they can sign up their existing insurance agent, stockbroker, financial planner, CPA. Just nominate them at economicwarroom.com/advisor. Give us their name and their basic contact information. We'll reach out to them and say, here's our class starting at Liberty University. We'd love to have them a part. And we don't try and tell them, oh, you have to invest in this or invest in that. We educate the advisors. And once their eyes are open to the national security and patriotic implications of investing, they're all in for it.
Yeah. Look, I'd like to think that that would be true of those who are the big investment bank managers as well. They've got, it seems, considerable material risk disclosure liability doing what they're now doing, and we'd like to see if they can't be persuaded to invest patriotically as well. Thanks for your leadership on that. And thanks to all of you for joining this edition of Securing America. I hope you feel better equipped to join us in doing just that. For more on what you can do, visit our website, securingamerica.tv. You can also follow me at Twitter at Frank Gaffney. Go forth and multiply.